More on the heat scorching the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. Let's bring in meteorologist Mike Seidel, who's coming to us from Baltimore. And how is everyone holding up there, Mike?
Well, Samantha, one thing we got going for us today is there's no heat advisory in the Baltimore, D.C. area. That's because we had a bubble of dry air move in overnight behind that boundary. And our dew point right now, get this, is 59. Yesterday, the dew point was in the 70s. What's that mean? The temperature's 94, but the heat index is actually a degree lower at 93. Don't get me wrong, it's hot out here, but it's more of a desert heat than that heat yesterday, which was just oppressive, with our heat index up around 102 and 103. Hey, we were wondering, how does the heat impact kids, especially young kids, any differently than us grown-ups and adults in this kind of heat that we're dealing with here in the Mid-Atlantic? Well, we got the answer this morning. We stopped by and talked to some of the doctors at nearby Johns Hopkins Hospital.
Yeah, so kids 1 to 4 years old are more susceptible to heat-related illnesses because they have a higher metabolic rate and they evaporate water more because they have a greater surface area to body ratio. They also can't necessarily express their thirst as well as adult patients or adult people, and so oftentimes they're at high risk for heat-related illness, mainly heat exhaustion or heat stroke. And children who are left unattended in vehicles are at the highest risk for heat stroke, and that's something we worry about a lot.
Yes, again, do not leave your child in a vehicle unattended. We had another child car death earlier this week. We want to keep that at 0. Unfortunately, that probably isn't going to be the case. And for us adults, if you start getting dizzy, nauseous, if your body temperature goes up, especially above 103, that's a sign of heat stroke. You need to call 911. As far as Baltimore goes so far this month, we've had over 20 days above 90. In fact, today will be number 25. Temperatures running about 1.5 degrees above average. Going into the weekend, the hottest weekend so far this summer, the hottest weather for some of you so far this summer. Some spots may hit triple digits, but the other thing, Mike, here in Baltimore and Philly and D.C. is that humidity is going to come back up as we get into the weekend, and that means the heat index will go back up.
And that means everyone's irritability goes way up as well. Mike, appreciate the report there. Beautiful blue sky behind Mike, but as temperatures definitely turn dangerous. Mike, thank you. Coming up here on Weather Underground. More
on the heat scorching the Middle Atlantic and the Northeast. We're going to bring in meteorologist Mike Seidel live in Baltimore. And you mentioned the dew point was down a little bit today, so that's helping you out a tiny bit?
It is, especially when you're in the shade. Yesterday, our dew point was up around 72 to 74. That measures the moisture at the surface. Our dew point last hour was 59. Now it's up to 62. What's that due to the heat index? Our temperature's 94. The heat index is just a degree warmer. Yesterday, with that higher dew point and a humidity around 50% in the afternoon, that pushed the heat index up to 102 to 104 degrees. So as hot as it is, as they say, it can always be worse and more uncomfortable. And this is a concerning heat wave because it's going to be the longest stretch of 90-degree days so far this summer. Right now, we're at 4, going on 5 in Baltimore. So we went right up the street here to Johns Hopkins Hospital, talked to the doctors this morning, and wanted to find out what their biggest concern is with the heat here in the Mid-Atlantic.
Extended heat waves provide extra risk for a couple of different reasons. First of all, in this part of the country, as a whole, people are not accustomed to prolonged and sustained periods of heat year-round. So people don't have the natural abilities and places to go to get out of the heat. We know that the longer the heat is prolonged and extended for, the greater the risk is for people, particularly those that don't have access to resources to cool off, that don't have access to resources to stay hydrated, and those who, despite having those resources, because of essential work that they do, have to be out in the heat. So yes, the longer we're in these periods of sustained heat, the greater the risk is for everyone involved.
Yeah, excellent points there. Remember, it is going to stay hot into Monday. Next week, it does get a bit cooler with temperatures. Some days may not even get to 90. But for this weekend, temperatures in the upper 90s, humidity's high, heat indices as high as 105. So that heat advisory in Baltimore and D.C., guaranteed that's going to come back on the docket tomorrow and Sunday. So as the doc said, hydrate, find a cool location. If you know anybody elderly folks, friends, neighbors that don't have air conditioning, make sure you check on them, because if they don't have good circulation with these overnight lows being so warm, Mike Bettis, it just doesn't cool off. So let's get through this without any fatalities the best we can. And remember, don't leave your kids unattended in a hot car. Even if it's running, don't do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, thank you so much for the report. Those 80 nighttime lows, that's pretty tough for sure. Mike, thank you. More from Mike coming up, and still to come here on Weather Underground.
So we're going to bring in meteorologist Mike Seidel, who is live for us in Baltimore, Maryland today. And Mike, still pretty sweltering, not as humid out there, but still, like you said, folks are flocking to the beaches in advance of this heat wave this weekend.
Yeah, hot is hot. Whether the heat index is 97 or like yesterday it was 104, it's 97 now. The temperature's 95 because we have some drier air in the mid-Atlantic today. Our dew point, which measures that moisture at the surface, has dropped from the mid-70s down to the mid-60s. It does make a difference, especially if you're in the shade and you can get some breeze. We do have a northwest wind that's coming down the Patapsco from the Inner Harbor, and occasionally it picks up and gives you some relief. So mid-90s is basically the temperature in the D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia urban corridor along I-95. And this is going to be the longest heat wave so far this summer. This is day 5 here in Baltimore consecutively, but we're up over 24 days, counting today, in the 90s so far this season. We went over to Johns Hopkins Hospital, which is just up the street this morning, to talk to some of their doctors and ask them what their concern is, what you need to do as we battle this heat wave going into the weekend and early next week.
I wish I could say there's one singular big mistake that people make when it's hot, but I think it's lack of appreciation, lack of awareness, and lack of taking it seriously. And all those things translate into lack of having a good plan for what to do if it gets too hot where you are and where you can go.
Yeah, have a plan, and if you're going to be outdoors, take it easy. If you're going to exercise, try to do it in the morning when it's the coolest part of the day. And stay hydrated. That's the best way to go, and find a cool place. If you don't have the opportunity to get to a pool or a beach, always find maybe the mall, maybe the movie theater. We've got the Urban Pirates. This is how you stay cool, Mike and Samantha. Get on the pirate ship, Relentless, and they take you around the Inner Harbor, and they're having some fun out there. Earlier, Mike, they were dancing. I'm not sure if there's any beverages being served, but it's a way to cool off. The water temperature, by the way, right here is about 85 degrees.
Oh. Still, it's still cool enough to cool. Do you have water cannons on that thing, Mike?
Let me see. No, I don't think they have any armaments. They left those over at Fort McHenry.
Shoot their water cannons. Shoot their water cannons at Mike Seidel. Cool him off.
Someone dancing around the pole there. I don't know. Anyway.
We don't need to see that. Mike, thank you, Mike. More Weather Underground right after this.
We're going to check back in with meteorologist Mike Seidel. He is live in Baltimore, where the high temps are going to be really heating up this weekend once again. But it's not as muggy. You were mentioning the humidity, how it really dropped, and that's made things a bit more comfortable for you today.
Yeah, a little bit better today, and if you're out on the ship here, they do have some water cannons, Mike Bettis. The Urban Pirates are out on the Relentless, and look at that. They're staying cool out there. We'll come back and talk heat, the weekend, and where to go to escape it next.